In content marketing circles, we tend to talk a lot about company branding, product branding, how to put together your message, your elevator pitch, but we don't necessarily spend as much time on personal branding, particularly as it relates to your company executives or spokesperson for the organization. So today I brought along Doc Williams, who is an expert at personal branding, and he'll talk about why this is an important focus for company executives and how to get started. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in marketing to technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues and industry friends of mine who will stop by to tell you their stories. And my goal is that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a quick shout out to TREW Marketing. TREW is a content marketing agency based in beautiful Austin, Texas, and serves companies focused in technical industries. For more information, visit trewmarketing.com. And now on with our podcast. Well, today I'm here with the CEO and founder at Brand Factory, Doc Williams. Doc helps successful founders turn their passion, authority, and skills into what he calls their signature passion product to make an impact in their industry. So welcome to the show, Doc.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I am excited to dive into personal branding. This is a very interesting topic to me because we work with a lot of technical companies and executives, and a lot of times our focus is more on the branding story around the company. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on why personal branding should also be a focus.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. This is, I love talking about this. So you just tell me where to start. I love it.
All right. Well, before we dive in, I did a little digging on you and I saw that you have a background in physical therapy, and I'm so curious to know what led you from that career into what you do today.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I originally started, I wanted to be a massage therapist. And so I went to school for massage therapy. And then I guess, I don't know, is that the first recession? So 2008.
2008. That's when I started my business. I'll forever remember that recession.
Yeah. That was, and so I got out of massage therapy school and everything was just falling apart and luxuries were just not a thing.
Yeah.
And so my parents were like, listen, you're going to have to do something else. And they're like, you can keep doing that too, but you have to go back to school. So went back to school for a physical therapy assistant, graduated out of there. And as I was doing that, all the way from massage therapy, even before massage therapy, I was a personal trainer. And so even though when I was in the clinic seeing patients, I was always training, always at the gym. And then I was like, you know what, I think I can do this. So then I opened a CrossFit gym at the same time I was a PTA
Nice.
too.
Nice.
And then from there, opening the gym and opening a parkour gym, I discovered that I really liked being in fitness. I just didn't like running anything, and patients, being in a clinic and dealing with insurance. I was very idle. I didn't know how insurance worked, and I didn't know how the industry was when you used to bill billable hours. So at the time I was working in a skilled nursing facility, I was seeing my patients, and there was just a lot of insurance issues, and I just did not like doing that with the patient and realizing, hey, you're only going to be seeing the patient based on what they can pay, or this is all these other things you have to consider.
Yeah, a lot of paperwork and less about physically helping people and doing what attracted you in the first place, it sounds like.
Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? I'm pretty much done with that. And then I realized I didn't like just being in the gym in a brick and mortar business all the time. But I did like working with athletes and working with their marketing and doing opt-ins and doing email campaigns. And that's what I was learning as I was running my gym. And I was like, you know what? I want to start working with different personalities, working with athletes. So as I was running a gym, I pivoted, started writing for ESPN, started covering sports, and then being introduced and being with athletes, I started ghostwriting and building out their marketing campaigns.
Okay. So were you the person behind all the tweets that go out from professional athletes?
That's a really good question. You know what
People
I was
always wonder about that. Who's
Yeah.
behind some of that?
So it depends. It depends on. So I would always say I'm the architect around it. So I would tell them,
Okay.
hey, this is what your audience is saying. Maybe this is what you should tweet about.
Hmm.
Certain athletes, for the most part, most athletes handle a lot of the things that they do.
I like
They
to hear that.
Yeah,
To me, authenticity is very important in
yeah.
personal brands. So
Yeah, good and bad, for good or worse. They
fair
did it
enough.
themselves. No, but it was always that. And then a
Yeah.
lot of athletes, what I noticed when they were when they were with agents and stuff like that, it was either endorsements or social media. They didn't have
Ah,
the go between to understand when they get cut or when they retire, how are they going to bring their fans and their audience and really own the fans, not just
mhm.
on social media. So I was more of that web of opting in, how they do their emails, or what products or services should they offer around their personal brand. And so that was my connection.
Interesting. Okay. And then now you work also in technology. So how did you translate some of those skills over to the tech space?
Yeah, so a lot of times athletes, they get asked to endorse or create products or do services, and this was around 2011, 2012. There was a big influx of like everyone wanting to build apps or doing things with technology, and a lot of athletes were like, it was still mystical. And I think it is a little bit now, but it was really mystical back then. It's like, I
Sure.
want to create this.
An app
I
for
need an app.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So because I always say this, when you're I am a terrible coder, but in the fitness and in sports world, as long as someone knows someone that knows something about computers or knows a little bit more than them, like they're the tech guy. So then people just used to approach me building apps for them and doing things like that.
Hmm.
And I just knew enough to know the lingo to then get the programmer and tell them what I wanted and still be able to talk to the athlete. I'm like, this is what the coder is saying. This is what you're saying, and I was the middle person to be like, okay,
Yeah.
this is what we need.
Yeah. Kind of like the business analyst and translate in between. Very
Exactly.
good.
Exactly.
Well, let's dive into our topics. So let's start with just the basics. If we have some listeners who have never considered what the heck a personal brand is, just can you give us a quick overview?
Yeah. So a personal brand is what personifies the person. So even outside of the company, they can do and move in time and space the way they want and be able to explore other projects. I try to give two different examples, similar to like Elon Musk, right? So if you say Elon Musk, yeah, you might know Tesla and all these things, but for the most part, you understand like, oh, it's this guy and this is what he stands for
Yeah,
and it goes on and on.
it's a great
So
example.
so a personal brand allows you to do that. You can still operate in your business, but it allows you to showcase your values or personality. And when you want to pivot or do other personal projects, you're not tied to that company, either your own or a company you work for. So when that leaves, you can now draw that audience and they will follow you to the next path.
I see. Okay. So I see what's potentially in it for that company leader. How does it help the company if someone works on their personal brand?
So there's an example of this if your audience is familiar with like Gary Vee. So Gary Vaynerchuk, right? So if you look at how he moves around, they do not have a sales team. It is Gary. And so I've worked with VaynerMedia before too. I forgot to mention that. But throughout the years, so Vayner Sports, VaynerMedia, and Sasha Group, so under VaynerX. And so when the inbound interest for VaynerMedia, Fortune 500 companies, that comes from Gary's brand.
I
And
see.
all he's doing is talking about, and throughout the years, he's actually turned the storyline. So that's another style of personal brands. But if you've seen Gary starting in like 09, like 10, 11, it was hustle, 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 all of this stuff, right? Then he went to a different storyline where he was more talking about his investments. The storyline around 2019, 2020, it was gratitude, right? I'm grateful, all of these things. And that was him putting out a signal and putting out his own content, but it weaves in all the other things that he wants to do with business. That goes into his passion projects, wine, Empathy Wine. He was able to grow it and then sell it. Vayner Sports, AJ, his brother, runs that department. But when Gary talks about Vayner Sports or Vayner Gaming or all of these other branches, it's a personification of his own interests and everything like that. So it raises the stock of the company. And there's several different examples as well, Jasmine Star and others, but those are a couple examples.
I see. So to dig into that one example a little bit further, so it sounds like, and I didn't realize how many different ventures he had going. I knew a few, but wow, you just named several that I'm like, really? And so what I heard is, there any given time period, he had a theme in which he could then tie to each of those businesses, but then kind of wrap together to his own personal story. So it's
Exactly.
interesting to kind of think about the mechanics behind that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and everything I always say, like, just reverse engineering where you're trying to do that. So Gary knew exactly who he was trying to target. He knew his target demographic, who was on the radar, and then he reverse engineered what was going on. Going into 1:37 p.m. and releasing that publication and that platform. Going into Vayner Sports, and first of all, he's a huge Jets fan. He always talks about it, and then pivoting and talking about getting newer players that, again, getting signed right out of college, and then his twist on it and how he gets them different brand opportunities and ad deals and things like that.
So when you say reverse engineer, I guess taking a step back to someone who has never really worked on defining a personal brand, what are some of the initial steps that you need to take to start down this road?
So two things I would think. Number one, defining what kind of brand you want and the impact. So for example, do you want to have a lifestyle brand? And so you're going to be comfortable, you're making a couple mil at top end, right? And you're just moving through time and space. And you want to be known in a niche community. That's one area. The other one is like industry takeover, and you want to be the leader in that, you want to be known. That's a little bit harder, but you have to really clearly define where you want to be, or like, what does that best day look like? And for an example, one of our clients, I asked, he's like, I just want to be known. Okay, so what does that look like? To him, it was, I want to be invited to be at South by Southwest talking about X. Okay, great. Now we can reverse engineer. You want to be at South by Southwest? Have you ever been there? Okay, no. Who do you know that either manages South by Southwest, or not just manages the whole event, but different side stages? What do you want to be about? All those things. And so now it's reverse engineering. Okay, people need to know about your theme or what you want to be known by. Okay, we need to get you on smaller stages. So almost similar to like a band that performs at smaller clubs before stadiums. That's our approach of, you need to have a playlist. You need to be touring. You need to have your fans to let them know where you're going to be traveling. And now we have, okay, this is the club. This is your arena. This is the type of stadium that people will know you at this level. And then this is where you're going to be here. And then we reverse engineer. We break down per month, we break down per year, per quarter, per month, per week. And then we build out content and get the right type of eyeballs on that personal brand.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's a very methodical approach and easy to wrap your head around. What are some of the roadblocks that you hit during this process? And I imagine one of those being COVID and, pandemic and events being canceled. I mean, how has this changed your process now?
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, it has changed quite a bit. I find that it's actually easier.
Oh,
Because right now, event organizers and brands in general are scrambling to figure out content and how to stay afloat and where they should go. So if a personal brand comes in and you have a defined message, you can show that you can articulate what you want to talk about that subject, and you can have your own flavor on it, you're off to the races. They're going to book you. And once you get in one, it's very easy to replicate and scale out and be on another conference, connect with another person, and then rinse and repeat.
I see. So it's really landing that first significant engagement.
Yeah, yeah.
And having the right content around that. So let's one layer deeper. So in looking at content, I'm sure there's two ways to go about that, right? Is what is that person capable of speaking about? What's their unique story, but also what is that organizer looking for? So what are some of the ways that you match up those two things?
Yeah, so I think it's in, I just basically look for passion. If the person can talk about it and they're excited, we can go with that subject. And so it's usually a how-to or something you're really excited to teach someone.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other rallying cry is there might be something in your industry that you just cannot stand, and you can just go crazy about talking about that. Either one causes a great amount of emotion, and we can go with either one. And that's attractive to. Then we look at, okay, when is their conference? There's no way you're going to be on their conference if it's 3 weeks away. It's just not going to happen. So it's usually targeting them a year out, or usually trying to find that brand has smaller events. So then you go and show up to one of their webinars, or you're willing to do one of their webinars, and then you're in the ecosystem, and then you just go up from there.
That makes sense.
And so we find a lot of brands, they're trying to do monthly or even weekly live streaming, podcasting, something. And so you get in on the floor level, you already talk to the people, and then you're like, hey, by the way, I have this project. I was thinking about X, Y, and Z. I think this is what I'd like to talk about. Are you having anything, do you think that would benefit your audience? And they're like, you know what? I was thinking about, I have a conference. We can slide you in this, and did it. And you're done.
There you go. Building those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to hear, I do have a step-by-step if you want me to tell you, but that's it.
Yes. Bring it on. This is very interesting. Taking notes for my own personal branding. Are you kidding me? I feel like I'm having a coaching session right now. It's fantastic.
Oh, great. So the way that we do it is basically we do 3 by 3 by 3 by 3 by 3, 1. And what I mean by that is you're having, you show up.
This is the coach in you coming out, by the way. All I heard was like 3 100s, 3 4 4, like a ladder, like track. I was back to high school track just then.
Exactly right. It's true. It really is reps. Like, honestly, what I was about to say, it is reps, because you have your own personal brand, and we view this as like your own, it's your own club. It's your own smaller show, and you should be showing up 3 different ways weekly. And so we do basically live streaming. We always do live streaming because then you can strip the audio and you can make your own podcast too. And that's another audience. So we do live streaming, podcasting, and then guest starring on some kind of piece of content. Either you're doing guest posts, or you're just either helping out in an audience or a group, Quora, Facebook group, highly something very known to your audience. You do that weekly, and you just rinse and repeat. And
okay,
when you're
all
doing
3 of those weekly, or one of the 3 weekly?
So it's so what we do when we start with different ones, we say, don't be overwhelmed, just do one. Okay. Don't even worry. Yeah. What then happens is we have a process, and we use this platform called repurpose.io. We just do everything in automation. Mm-hmm. So when we do this, and I'll tell you at the end, it's everything. I just show up live streaming once, and then all my other pieces of content are already done for the month. So it's showing up live streaming, podcast, doesn't matter, or just posting or talking to someone or guest starring. The main thing is you want to be on one kind of pillar in your community at least once a month. So say, for instance, if, so if you're in tech and you're a cloud practitioner, you've already done things with AWS, right? And so you're doing something with Amazon Web Servers. That's your audience. That's what you're going to be talking about, all those things. Who cares about that information? Are you going to be at Hacker Noon? Or are you going to be on that? Where do they hang out, and where can you be the authority? You want to do that at least once a month. So that track of 3 by 3, first, it's just one. Just try to show up once a week. Try to be in a place where you have authority once a month. Afterwards, you scale it and you do 3 a week, 3 a month. And really we just always repurpose. You just say the same message, just in a different medium, because people that are watching live streamings is a little bit different. We were talking about before off air, podcasting. When you're at the gym, people consume different content. They're in different places in their life. So my live stream is going to hit someone very different than if they only consume my content podcasting.
And when you mentioned repurpose IO, is that an outsourced company that repurposes for you, or is it an automated solution?
That's a good question. So it's an automated solution. So it's almost like, have you ever heard of Zapier?
Oh, sure.
So it's Zapier for content.
Oh,
so when I do my live stream, I plug it in my workflows, send it to Twitter, sends it to YouTube. It does all of these other things. But then also when I put timestamps, it cuts my piece of content and makes micro content about it based on the timestamps. So when I do it in real time, I actually put timestamps and it just cuts it up and it already has a schedule to send it out.
Oh, I see. Okay, so everything I'm paying my 20-year-old to do today for this show, we could automate him. Watch out, Grayson. You can be replaced by a bot.
I'm sorry, Grayson. But he could always manage it too. So this is what I do. So I do it, and for my team, I just now, instead of like spending hours and doing it all the time, they just have to do it for 15 minutes once a week. And they have the timestamps. They're like, oh, I'm going to change the thumbnail, blah, blah, blah. And they do it. But now it saves them time. Then I'm like, now you can do outsource. You can now check all of these conferences, my lists of 157 that are happening in the US. I need you to contact each one because you have so much time on your hands. You can do other things.
There you go. That's a good value prop. So we just up-leveled his job is what I heard. Get excited, Grayson.
Exactly right. So it's that when we go by that. So it's the 3x3, the monthly, you go by there. And then quarterly, I'm trying to show up at 3 tentpole events 3 times a quarter. I think 4 times it's just too much. I need a month off, or I'm going to be doing something. So 3 times in a quarter, I'm going to be showing up at some virtual conference or something like it. And again, we start with, because I've done smaller content with them, probably during that month, I ask them, and then I'm like, oh, if you have anything coming up. And usually a brand has a quarterly event. You slide right into that quarterly event. I'm just looking for 3 companies. I'm already booked for that entire quarter.
Just like that.
Yep. And then the last thing is annual. So we view it kind of like, I don't watch wrestling, but everyone knows SummerSlam. And so, or that's the main one, right? And they have all of these things. So similar to like SummerSlam
I would
and
have
wrestling.
thought Super Bowl. I'm a football girl, but
we'll do this.
But
okay,
I can hang with wrestling.
No, this is good. This is good. So so we'll go with this. Super Bowl, and then we have playoffs, and then we have conference rivals and all of these things, right? So it's the storyline that leads up to the Super Bowl. So as long as you have the storyline, as you're doing your weekly or monthly content, I'm asking my audience, okay, what did you like this content? Was this helpful? And I'm asking them to talk back to me. I'm taking those subjects, and now that's what I'm putting out as new content, because they're either telling me, yes, I resonate, or no, I'm really struggling with this. Guess what? That's my next subject. That's my next video. And now I bring the audience from weekly. Hey, I'm talking to you weekly. Don't forget, I'm showing up at this magazine at the end of the month. Go download it, write your comments, blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, I'm on a conference in 2 months. Make sure you sign up if it's paid or if it's free, but the tickets are right here. Here's the code. Okay, remember I've been talking about this subject and what I talked about at the conference? I'm now having an annual event. I'm actually throwing my own event at the end of the year. It's all about these things. I'm bringing all of these guests. It's a paid thing, boom. And now my entire storyline just went through the whole year. I have my own showcasing event that showcases me. And if I have that, other people are watching, and now I'm going to be on even more conferences, even more podcasts for the next year to come.
I see. And you've built all your content along the way, and you know that it resonates. So you're not just starting from scratch with this event. You've curated it and gotten feedback. That's great. It reminds me of a lot. So I published a book, shameless plug, in May. But a lot of that content came from blog posts the 3 years prior, right? So in some ways it was a curation exercise, very similar to what you're describing. and
Exactly.
honing it as we went, and figuring out what people really wanted to hear, and organizing that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
very good.
And then along the way, one last thing, if I'm really big about, depending on if you're doing the personal brand and you're looking to monetize later on, but I think it's really powerful that I see there's always either people are either selling or like they do no promotion, they don't have a connection to sell. And I think it's important to test the audience to see what they're willing to pay and what they find valuable. So during these exercises, I'm throwing out prices all the time to leverage and see where the positioning is. Because I find a lot of people just undervalue themselves, especially when they're coming out of their personal brand. And it's really tough if you're putting like that, oh, this is my signature product, and it's like only a couple hundred. I'm like, we could have made that, we could have made it 10,000 or more, depending if we did more research, if we tested who you resonate with more. So along the way, I'm always like, hey, throw out products, throw out what you want to do, services. If no one pays for it, okay, no worries, move on. But at least throw it out and see what your audience says.
Yeah, good advice. So, so when you're working with someone who says, "Okay, I like this 3x3x1 plan. I'm buying in. It sounds great, but Doc, I have a day job. Like I'm running a company. I'm doing all the sales, whatever it is." So, do you give guidance on how much time should be set aside for personal branding versus other aspects of running a business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that actually comes down to what do you have in front of you right now and where do you want to go? Are you trying to just build it like passively, just to put like signals out and let people know? Are you trying to make an exit and you're like, we're being acquired? And like, I have 9 months until I'm out and I'm going to do my own thing. I want to put time and energy. And then also, too, family responsibilities and how much sanity do you want? I think those are real questions to
Right?
consider.
Exactly. How much time do you want to have going fishing at the coast? That would be mine. I have
Yeah.
to have time for that.
Yeah. And so with that, it's almost like, okay, and this is one last thing I forgot to say. How much personality and how much of you do you want to show? And how much do you want to keep
Boy,
to
that's
yourself?
that's a really good consideration right there. Mm-hmm.
And everyone's different, but I'm always like, I always say, like, we gotta have a come to Jesus moment before we do this. We've got to really talk about this, because the biggest problem that I see is people think they know what they want until you get what you want, and then they're like, no, I don't want this kind of relationship. I don't want people to know this much about me, or I'm not comfortable spending this much time. I'm like, we got to talk about all those things first. So what I usually do is align it with what's going on with your life and then cut off half of it. Don't try to use every to the 1%, because you won't be happy. You'll burn out and all this stuff. What do you want to do? And if you want, I can go through an exercise. If you give me a scenario, I can knock it out.
uh,
Or I can just
uh,
talk about it, whatever
y-
you'd like.
yeah. Like what do you mean? Like what kind of scenario?
So if you want to tell me like, oh, I'm doing this kind of business, or you can talk about yourself, or you say, hey, yeah. So I mean, do you want to
I
talk about
do
yourself
have a
or someone
scenario,
else?
actually, Doc. I think that a lot of the folks listening are working at engineering companies,
Yeah.
and the leader of the organization is an engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're not necessarily a good spokesperson. They're very technical, they're very smart. But oftentimes that's the situation, is they don't understand or appreciate the need to do some of these things. So
Yeah.
it's part education, one, but also I think you hit on that. They're not necessarily people that want to be in the limelight or care about, some of those aspects of it.
That's a really good thank you for telling me those details. So I would first go to that end goal. Okay. So are you trying to raise enough attention to build another company? Do you want to leave or think about later on maybe doing consulting, and you need to show your expertise and you're just going to be doing consulting after you're done with this company? Or do you want to go the almost like audit route where, listen, I want to just solve problems. I don't want people to talk to me. You hire me because I'm the best, and that's what you're getting.
Yeah, I think it's more that it's credibility and thought leadership. So, right, it's
Yeah.
as the founder and executive of a company, using personal branding to bring more credibility to the organization.
So the thing is with that, you're going to have to first look at your audience and find out what do they need to know? What are you seeing and why are you so credible to shine a light on what people are missing? And if
Mhm.
you can show up that way, people are going to flock to you. Personality aside, if you're saying, hey, this is where I am in the industry, this is what we do, and look at what's happening in the industry right here, and you can just dive into it and say, I'm just going to, just a morsel, I'm going to talk about what's happening here. You go through that rabbit hole and then you come out the other side and say, and that's why I did this with our company. That's why we have these, standards. And we also have these values in our company. And then you just keep dipping into the well, looking at what's happening. And then you're bringing that credibility right back because they realize, okay, this person is the founder of this company and they have just figured out all of these things without me needing to do that.
Yeah,
Boom. And
that's
then
great.
it's right there.
Because it's having a point of view on the subject rather than just, hey, here's the answer, but explaining some of the journey, having that story, having, that perspective and sharing just enough and not going too in the weeds, right? Because that can be supporting content or heck, that's why you want to interact with that company in the first place, right? So tell
Yeah.
enough of the story to whet someone's appetite.
Yeah. The other thing, as you were talking about that, I see this as an issue sometimes when there's founders that want to be respected among their peers.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, but is that your target audience if you want more customers? Like, and that's why I'm like, are we really talking about your ego? Or are we talking about you getting more money and customers? Like, we can play
Right.
either game. Like, your personal brand can be about your ego, but we need to talk about that versus you making more money because it
Mm-hmm.
can work both ways, but they're not mutually exclusive or beneficial between the two.
Sure. Different end goals for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Good. This is so interesting. I feel like I could talk to you for 2 hours on this. But in the spirit of not giving too much information and instead leaving people to dig deeper for more, where can our listeners go to find more information about you and your business?
Yeah, so my agency that I run in business and education platform, it's brandfactoryinc.com. And then to see all what I'm talking about, I have a YouTube channel and a YouTube live streaming show where I build 3 businesses with one tech tool every single show, and that's called Build With Me. So they can go to thebuildwithmeshow.com or look for me on Doc Williams, Doc Williams on YouTube. You'll find the channel, and I'm there every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern.
All right, cool. I have to go check that out. I want to see what you build every week. That's awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And do you have any parting words of advice for personal brander wannabes?
No, I just say the best, just start recording yourself, either, memo pad or I would say video. Just get used to looking at yourself and talking.
Suffering through that.
Yeah. And just do your reps, like
Yeah.
do it every day. It doesn't matter. Just narrate yourself, get used to it because that helps you so much further down the line when you want to show up with
Mhm.
conferences or whatever. You got to get past yourself. You got to get past your own voice, get going, and you'll be fine.
Great advice. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Visit truemarketing.com/podcast for notes and resource links from today's episode. While you're there, learn other ways to grow your business with content marketing, from educational resources such as self-paced training to hands-on services by the expert TREW marketing team. You can also order my book, also named Content Marketing Engineered. Thanks and have a great day.